Good evening, folks. Author R. Weir here, Randy. Hope you all had a great Christmas and have a safe New Year's tomorrow. We're going to have a boring night as usual in our household, and my guest and I will probably talk about what she's going to be doing as well, but we don't usually do much. I was going to let everybody know I had signed up for Left Coast Crime, which is coming up in March. That's another big author event's being held here in Denver. So it's like, I don't really have any excuse not to go. There are some of the guests of honor, which should be great. And I've got a few people here, and I got my little list here. What do I do with it here? Because I have a few people that are coming to the event that I've already interviewed. T.O. Payne, Kathleen Donnelly, Margaret Mizushima, Helen Starbuck, and I have a couple others in the future. Elizabeth Crowans and Amy Rivers are going to be, and I hope to have a few others as well that be on before we have that event down in downtown. And my guest here will, she normally goes to it, but she can't go this year, so I'm going to bring her on. This is Mary Kelihkoa. How you doing? I think I got it right.
Okay. I'm great, Randy.
So Mary and I, well, actually my wife, I think, met your husband, Rob, and then brought you into it, the conversation at BoucherCon this year in Nashville. And we got to talking about books and stuff. And I mentioned about the podcast and you said, sure. So I'm thanks for being on. I appreciate you connecting with us from your side of the world.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun. It was fun to meet you in Nashville.
Yeah, that was quite an event. I definitely got a lot of steps in that event, and it was god awful hot for the 3 days that we were there. It was like 100 degrees every day, which is even insanely hot for Nashville in that time of year. Maybe, you spent a lot of your time in Hawaii, I believe, at least some of your time. Doesn't usually get that hot there, but the temperature never changes much, does it?
Well, usually in the summer. Summer is not the ideal time to go there because it's hot and muggy. They get that humidity going. But yeah, generally speaking, it's not usually 100 degrees, thankfully.
Yeah. And occasionally rain, though I know they had some dry spells there for a while, and bad fires in portions of some of the islands in Hawaii.
Yeah, they did. It rains just like they have their seasons where it's a little rainier. Like my husband and I tend to go in February quite often. And it's, the rainy season. But, rain there is, an hour of rain and then the sun comes out, dries it all up and, you're back outside. And even if it's raining, it's warm. So it's just, and I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so a little rain never hurt me. I don't even own an umbrella. So I don't really care.
Yeah, well, I know I had one of my guests, and I'm drawing a blank on who it was actually in Seattle, and she was telling me how dry it has been there the last few years, because I always think of Seattle, rainy all the time, and like London, it just rains and rains and rains and rains. And
yeah, and I'm from the I'm still in Washington, but I'm on the Portland, Oregon side. I'm 15 minutes from the border. So we get some of that Portland weather, which isn't quite as rainy as Seattle, but yeah.
Well, great. Well, tell us a little about yourself, your family, pets, whatever you want to talk about. Brag about yourself and everybody.
Oh my goodness, I'm not very good at that part. I need my husband for that part. We were just talking. Gosh, I'll be 60 in 2025. I'm kind of excited. I don't know why. That just seems like a big number, but kind of I don't know. I'm looking forward to it a little bit. And I've been writing for a while. I'm published at the age of 55 though, so I was kind of a late bloomer. But as far as family, I'm a stepmom. I've been married almost 36 years. I have 2 daughters and 8 grandchildren. So I stay busy with them, and they're all into sports. And so that's fun to, be the grandma on the sidelines, rooting them on. That's always cool.
You're not one of those crazy parents, are you?
Oh, no. No, I keep it low key. And we have no pets at the moment, but we have a brand new golden retriever puppy coming on the 26th of January. And so we're starting to puppy proof the house. Like, it's like having a child, right? So we're like, making sure the cords are up and hidden and getting
They'll
the crate.
find them.
Oh,
They'll find them no matter what. The puppies are going to find your shoes,
yeah.
dirty clothes, anything. They'll find something to chew on.
Especially golden retrievers, because of their mouth, they always have to have something in their mouth. And so even when our golden was 11 years old, she was trotting out with our socks in her mouth, usually as many as she could fit. So yeah, that never ends for a golden retriever. But we're kind of excited. We lost our golden 2 years ago. So we're ready to love again, as they say, and bring a new puppy in. So we're excited.
Wow, that's a long gap, because anytime we lose a dog, my wife's like, you're upset. It's always emotional. It's tough. It's like a member of the family and stuff. And it seems you go through that and you're like, oh, this is too hard. And then like 2 weeks later, my wife said, we got to get another dog. You've got to have a dog. And we've always had a dog in the house. So it's kind of one of those.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we were like that too. I mean, in fact, this is the longest time we've not had an animal. We lost our cat in August. So, for 4 months, we've had no animals whatsoever. And we've had animals since the day we met. I mean, when I met my husband, I had a dog, and we have not been without a cat or a dog for nearly 36 years. So I will say it was kind of nice to have a little bit of a break, a little bit of freedom, because, everything kind of revolves around, what time, they eat and how many hours you can be away from your house and right. All those things. And I don't regret a second of it, but it was nice to have a moment of just like, okay. And to grieve. I mean, we really just adored our golden. We've adored them all, but the other one we had since she was 9 weeks old, and it just hit us pretty hard to lose her. So it's just taken a little time, but we're ready. We're ready. So.
Yeah. Well, who gets to watch the dogs when you do travel?
Well, we have a house sitter for that now.
Gotta have someone else.
Yeah, and we have a 24-year-old grandson who also pet sits, and so I think we're going to be covered. We'll be okay.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So I was reading on your website that you were a legal secretary at one time. Tell us a little about what it was like working in the world of law. Is it anything like you see on television?
Not really. No, not at all. Not nearly.
It's like that dramatic, is it? Imagine that. Huh?
No. Yeah. So I started my legal career when I was 17. Actually, I had spent the summer with my sister, who was a legal secretary in Oklahoma, and she took me to work every day. And I kind of got the bug. I really enjoyed the pace of her office. And I was doing filing and some little things. And I was a pianist by training. So typing really came to me very easy. So they'd set me up on typing projects because I could type fast, and I'd taken my typing class, in high school when typing was a thing that you could actually take in high school.
An actual typewriter, probably, right? You and I are similar ages, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm dating myself again, here. I actually had a typing class. But I really kind of got the bug. And then when I came back, my home ec teacher's husband was a bankruptcy attorney, and he needed somebody to come in and type bankruptcy petitions after school. So I did. So that was where I kind of got into the legal field. And then for 18 years, that was my life. I went to worked for several large law firms. I was a paralegal. I actually managed an 11 attorney office for about 2 years. And then went back into more paralegaling after that. So it was good. It was very educational, right? And because I've always kind of viewed life as like a justice, like in justice, there's these black and whites. It kind of fit my personality. I liked really analyzing the data. I liked the personalities. I liked seeing who was right, who was wrong. If I was the lawyer, what would I do with this? So it was a great.
Play out the trials in your head a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, Yeah. And I was a litigation secretary and paralegal, so I was prepping for trial all the time. And that part they do get right on TV. The pace. Sometimes you are working at a frantic pace till 11 o'clock at night to get everything ready for trial. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned on your website that you're one person who looks forward to jury duty when it comes across your desk. Have you
Yeah.
ever served on a jury before or multiple times?
I have been called 3 times and I've served once, and
Yeah,
I loved it.
yeah.
That
It
was
was
great.
enjoyable. Yeah,
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. There's always
yeah,
that one person who wants to take over in the jury room and kind of dictate things. And but as a mystery writer, I'm just grabbing all of that stuff out,
right.
for research. So it works.
Yeah, because I was on a jury once, and it was a drunk driver. It was a basic thing. It was a 1 day trial, and um, I found it interesting. We weren't in there very long. It was pretty obvious that he was a. I don't even know why he brought it to trial. He didn't have a lawyer. He didn't defend himself very well and stuff. And so it was one of those things. But I thought it was very interesting. And I've been on several. Well, I've been to a point, but I would always be dismissed
Yeah.
before I ever got on. Because sometimes, like one time, as soon as I said I had been on a jury, and I had been on a trial and we had a verdict, the guy immediately dismissed me.
Oh.
The one of the lawyers said, I'm striking him off, and the judge had to call him up there and say, hold on a second. And he talks to him quietly so we don't hear. He goes, wait, because I figured I'm getting up and leaving, right? And he said, nope, you're waiting. He was dismissing me a little quicker than he was supposed to. The judge was admonishing him, I had to sit there and wait for them to get done with everyone else. I already knew I was going to get dismissed.
Yeah.
But I had to wait for everybody else to get interviewed and done, and then they got to do their strikes, however many they get, depending on the cases and stuff, what type of case it is. So, but yes, I thought it was very, very interesting, and I'm sure in the legal world it's a lot of paperwork. Did you enjoy all the paperwork, or was that part of it could be a little bit tedious sometimes?
Depending. When I was doing paralegal work, it could be tedious because I would be doing what they call interrogatories, and so which are basically questions and answers, and those would get kind of tedious depending on the type of case it was. I did a lot of insurance defense, car accidents, that type of thing. But there was some wrongful death type of incidents that were very interesting, and so it just kind of depended on the case. But yeah, I mean, an interrogatory could be that thick, and you're just like, oh my goodness, and of course, if you're doing a car accident, the medical records are just huge. And then you have to summarize medical records, and that can, looking for previous injuries or, complaints of the same thing they're trying to get lots of money for or whatever, So
Right.
yeah, a lot of paperwork, a lot of pushing paper.
So did you ever get to talk to a judge?
Oh God. Not so much in that venue. No. I went on after leaving the legal field. I owned retail stores and kind of had a whole nother section of my life, another 24 years of self-employment that isn't on the website. I owned pet stores and stuff. And I actually met a lot of judges that would come in and buy dog food and cat food for their animals. And so that was, I got to know them separately in a different format. So.
Yeah, for my book, Murder by 100 Cuts, which has a trial in it and stuff, I got to interview a judge beforehand to understand. And he worked out at the courthouse I was using as a scene. So it's really interesting. And he actually was my lawyer at one time. So he was a friend. He lived in the neighborhood. So got to talk to him and interview him a little bit and learn a little bit about the procedures and stuff. And a lot of it is, at least here in Colorado, and it may be true around the country, is live online now. You can watch most of the proceedings, and you put that on the screen and you're looking at it going, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It just seems it's so much different than what you see on TV. Obviously they cut out, but there's just so many procedural things and paperwork and this and that. And it's very dry to watch. And if you're fascinated with it, you probably would enjoy it. But for me, it was like, wow, this sitting here watching this, and I'd put it on and I kind of listened to it sometimes while I was writing in the background, but it's still fascinating to watch, but it's still, there's so much, all the legalese and the paperwork and everything and all the procedural things. And
yeah, I think the most exciting part of it really is the interrogation part, right? Because the exhibits and all this stuff that has to happen long before you ever get to the meaty part.
Right.
It will put you to sleep. But then there's the good stuff, like,
Right.
when they're cross-examining and that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think I would like to have a notification on there. Okay, now we're getting into the cross-examination, the witnesses and stuff. That part would be fun, but a lot of the setup beforehand, and sometimes they're making deals on the side, before they bring everyone out. So there's a lot of dismissing the jury and all that, and all that. But I mean, it's still fascinating, but. I just thought it was interesting that, at least in Colorado, it's all online live now, and you can watch pretty much any of these procedures all day long if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. My sister is still in the legal field after all these years. She's still doing it. And I got out of it in 2000. So it's interesting to hear, how she says, we don't even run to the courthouse anymore. Like it used to be like, it was like 5 to 5 and you would have your complaint or your responses. And we were literally running to the courthouse to get them in on time. Now everything's just done electronically. She says, no. You just go in, hit a button and you're done. And I'm like, wow, that would have been great when I was doing it. But that was.
Well, and sometimes a lot of stuff is done remotely now too. They can do, some of the lawyers can do it remotely. Some of the witnesses will be interviewed remotely. I mean, they don't necessarily have to go there if that's a problem. Of course, during COVID, I'm sure all of it was remote then, but still they do a lot of it now. All the technology has changed. It's changed a lot. So
yeah, absolutely.
I wondered too, if I was asking this question of, he's like, do they still use court recorder, stenograph? The people are doing all the recording and all that typing and keeping track of everything. Since it's all recorded on digital now, do they need them? And I guess they say they still do that in a lot of court cases. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't. I've never asked that question, but that's good to know.
Yeah. So okay, so writing.
Yes.
What got you into writing? What drove you to be crazy enough to be an author?
Well, let's see. Let's go back to to being in the legal field again. I was 27, and I was sitting next to my seatmate. We had like little cubicles, and I didn't really want to write a book. I never really thought about writing a book. My English teacher never, gave me enough, kudos that I ever felt like I knew how to write a book. But I love to read. And I always read mystery, Mary Higgins Clark, that type of books. And I was really enjoyed all that. The lady next to me, however, had a dream of writing a book. And so she was like, one day she said, would you like to write a book with me? Like, maybe together we could do it during our lunch hour. And we were having lunch together anyway. And I thought, well, we're not doing really anything else but eating lunch, so why not? So we actually started writing a book together. And she never went on to write anymore. And I had the bug from that point on. So I went on to write 4 more novels, or 3 more novels, I guess, after the initial one. And then I took my break to run my company, and then I came back. But that's really where it started, with 27 and lunch hour, legal field, needed something to do during lunch, and that's what we did. So, but once I got into it, I just loved telling stories. So I haven't stopped since, really.
So what was it like writing with someone? Did you enjoy that aspect of trying to co-write, or did you find that difficult at all?
No, it was really fun because I had not really had this, idea of what it was to be a writer, or this, thing that I wanted to do. It was, I don't think I would have done it by myself. So having somebody to bounce the ideas off of, we'd get together occasionally during a weekend if there was a particular part of the book we wanted to work on. But generally it was very back and forth, and we learned a lot. I mean, we just learned so much about, structure, and just how to put a book together. And probably the biggest thing I got out of it is that I could do it. I was able to get through 300 pages and actually create a story. Did it sell? No. Did it get an agent? No. But, but it gave me the confidence that, this is a doable task. It's not so large if you just break it down and just kind of keep going on it. So then I went on to write other books because of it. So
those books you've never published?
Well, the second and third book I wrote, they're in a desk drawer. I've brought them out occasionally, but they're just no. But the fourth book that I wrote, I actually had drafted it and I set it aside, and it actually became my debut in 2020. So I wrote it in 1999, set it aside, opened our company. When I came back to writing, it was the book I pulled out to start looking at and thinking, gosh, could this be something? And it wasn't half bad, but boy, it was set in the late 90s. So it had a lot of updating to be done.
Yeah.
But that's the one that debuted, and that was Derailed.
Right. So Derailed, which we have right there.
Yeah.
Kelly Pruett mystery. So she's a private eye, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, she was a private investigator, and she's deaf. She is the mother to a deaf daughter, single mom. And of course, she has Floyd, her sidekick there. Set in Portland, and she inherits her father's PI agency. That's how the book starts. And a woman is coming to ask for her help because she doesn't believe her daughter fell in front of the MAX train in Portland. She thinks she was pushed. So that was kind of fun to be able to write a book 20 years earlier, and then to see it come to fruition. Now, it had a lot of editing, lots of editing, but it actually won Pitch Wars, which was a contest that was happening in 2016, where I got mentored by a published author, and it actually was nominated for several best debut novel in the 2020 year. So, yeah,
that's always very nice. What type of dog?
Basset Hound.
It's a Basset Hound. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And so you wrote it. When did you write again? The 90s, you said? And then it came out when?
2020. I wrote it in 1999 and finished it up in 2000. But it was also about the same time. I'd been writing for about 8 years at that point, and I wasn't getting a lot of traction, with the other books that I'd written. And my husband and I were talking about starting a company. So that it kind of coincided with, I finished the first draft of this book, Derailed, but we were starting a company. And so I couldn't do both. So I set the writing aside and spent 15 years building companies. And so that's what we did. But I sold off our retail in 2015. I turned 50. And I thought, gosh, now's the time to come back to my writing. If there was ever a time, this is the time. I'm 50. It's time to get back to this. This is, if I'm going to make this dream happen. And so that's when I came back. And
did you good money for the sale of your business? Did pretty good profit? Not that we want the IRS to know.
We've done pretty well in our businesses. Yes. I mean, we were in the pet industry, and natural pet foods and retail stores and distribution company, and everybody loves their pets. So it was a good industry to be in for 24 years. So.
And have you worked any of that into any plot lines of any of the books that you've written, the business, the world that you worked on?
Not really, not that part. No, I will say that working in retail, though, is great fodder for character development, though.
Oh, yeah. You meet a lot of characters, that's for sure.
A lot of characters.
Or even may have worked with a lot of characters as well, depending on.
That's true. That is true, too. It's all research.
Yes, as everyone says, for writers, they don't gotta be careful what you act around, or you might become a character in one of their books. And
yes.
So that was a 3-book series. So we can quickly go. So this was book 2, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you said she inherited the business from her father. Is that who it was?
Yes, her dad was.
And is her dad still alive?
No, he dies. So he died in the first book, unexpectedly. And that kind of puts her into a place of, grappling with her grief and trying to and her marriage has fallen apart. So she's a single mom. And in Denied, she's actually helping a pregnant classmate try to find her father. And it brings up a lot of her own history with her dad and how much he was, protecting her from what he knew and what he did in his life. There's a theme of family really that runs deep into this series about who she is and her independence throughout the series, and becoming her own person outside of her father's shadow. And also what you do when you put people too high on a pedestal, that it's destined to fail, destined to fall, when you do that to people. And she definitely experiences that in this series.
Our characters always have skeletons in their closet, right? Things that they
least
don't want people to find out, but they seem to always get found out.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
And then book 3 was this one.
Deceived. Yes. And Deceived was that she, I have to reach back here. We really deal with the homeless in this one. She goes into a woman's homeless shelter to find out a longtime client's granddaughter has gone missing. And so she goes in undercover to find out, because the granddaughter, that was the last place she'd been, was in this homeless shelter. So really kind of exposing a little bit of the underbelly of Portland and what's happening, and how sometimes the homeless are very much taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I love the end of this book. I think it was a full circle. I always knew it would be 3. And it completed, the arc completed for Kelly in that book.
So no more planned.
Over the years, I've I could do another one, but I think I would want Mitz, the deaf daughter, to be a little bit older, and just a little bit older. So she's 8 in the series.
Right.
So
never say never, right? So I had a 4-book series, and I've had people, some of my fans were mad at me for ending the series. So I was like, well, it was time to end, but you never know. If there's an idea that pops up, you might bring it back.
That's it. And as an author, I think we know the story, right? And so we kind of get to a place where we feel like this is a really good spot to leave them in. And you don't want to manufacture something that doesn't feel right for the character, or these are our people, we created them. We don't want to mess with them too much unless it's really worth their time to come back and do something. So yeah, never say never.
Yeah, they're our gang.
Yes.
So so you wrote those. So what came next?
Well, the next one, which was funny because I was actually writing book 1 of the next series before I'd finished the Deceived novel, and that is Hidden Pieces. Yeah. And it's the first book, and it's an ongoing series. So this one is not complete. Hidden Pieces features Sheriff Jax Turner. If you like Longmire, think Longmire-ish. But this one is set down at the Oregon coast. And he's got his kind of crew of deputies. Some are volunteer. And we meet Jax at his lowest point. His daughter, Lulu, has died of leukemia. His marriage has fallen apart, and he's about ready to end it for himself. And he gets a call from Trudy, who you meet throughout the series, who basically runs the show, and says that there's a missing 14-year-old girl. And part of Jax's backstory is that he failed. There were 2 girls that were abducted 25 years earlier, and he was only able to bring one home, and one died. And so he's just always felt that he was responsible on some level for that. So when this call in current time of a missing 14-year-old girl comes in, he feels like this might be his chance to make it right. Before he heads back to the beach to finish himself off. So he's like, I'm going to go finish this because it felt fitting to him, right? But of course, there is a book 2. So we know he's going to find purpose again, and he's going to do what he needs to do. So I love this character. This is probably my favorite character I write so far. There might be others, but he's my favorite so far.
So Misty Pines Mysteries. So is this based in an actual area there, or is this pretty much a fictional area that you created?
Well, it is fiction, but it is based on a real area. So I grew up down at the Oregon coast. My dad was a charter fisherman out of the Hammond Basin there. And there's a strip along the north coast, which is Hammond, Gerhardt, Seaside, Cannon Beach. And that's that whole strip of the Oregon coast. And I used Misty Pines to kind of capsulize, I guess you could say, that Hammond through Seaside area. So I didn't want, Hammond is very tiny. And so is Warrenton, all these little tiny towns. So I thought Misty Pines could be kind of a conglomeration of all of those. But it's an area I know very well. I mean, I was, 5 years old, riding my bike. This was before the Corps of Engineers put the fences up, and you could go to the old World War II batteries, and you could play like in the rubble of these buildings. Before tetanus was a thing, all of it. I had a really great childhood. I am not complaining.
The crazy stuff we did when we were kids, right?
Oh yeah. And now, of course, you always are bubble wrapping your children.
Yeah.
We did not. What? Get on your bike and come home for lunch and dinner. Bye. That's how father has. Yep. So it worked out. But so that is Misty Pines. And I will also say that the inspiration for this book, Jax actually came after the inspiration, which was when I was in high school in Sherwood High. A girl right behind me in class was abducted and murdered, and her body was found down at the Oregon coast. And her name was Charmel Ulrich. And we were not friends, but we knew each other, right? She was just a year behind me in class. Right. It was one of those things that changed the community forever, because we were all kids out in the country where we walked those streets all the time. And that all ceased the day that she was abducted, right? And that had always hung with me. And so when I was starting to think of this new series that I'd always wanted to put down at the Oregon coast, I thought, I want to bring this story in. I want to, bring that in as the backstory. And so it became the cold case of Hidden Pieces. And that's the case that Jax weighs on Jax. And, and it developed from there. I needed a strong character who was really needing redemption. And this was, and Jax Turner showed up, and he's been with me since. So, yeah. And
then you had book 2.
Yeah, Deadly Tides. Probably my favorite. People will sometimes ask me, do you have a favorite book you've written? Deadly Tides is probably my favorite book that I've written. And I love it because it pulled in the Hawaiian culture of surf, which is actually they're surfing down at the Oregon coast. But I got to do a nod to the kind of the surfing, the culture of it, which my husband was big on surfing. So it was fun to be able to brainstorm with him on different aspects about the novel. But yeah, it's about a missing surf shop owner who is later found, demised, and who had it in for him. But I think it's kind of fun because people don't always think of surfing down at the Oregon coast because it's very cold. You don't go out without a wetsuit on. Right. But it is an active culture there. So, yeah.
So would you describe what type of mystery do you could say these kind of cozy? Do you think they're more gritty? How would you describe these books?
Well, they're a little bit of, like I said, like Longmire. So they're more police procedural, small town sheriff type of feel. Definitely not cozy, but I don't do gratuitous violence either. So, I mean, there's blood in the dirt, but I'm not necessarily going to say, we're not going to have a scene about how that got there necessarily. It's graphic. You can read it if you have a weak stomach. I personally have to sleep at night, and so I don't spend a lot of violence in my books. I don't do that in my novels, but I think it's one of those people that if you like traditional mysteries, I think you'd really enjoy that. Yeah.
And you envision you've got another book, book 3 that you're working on now?
Yeah, Killer Tracks is the third book in the series, and it will be out on September 10th, 2025. And this one, you meet his new deputy, Rachel, in book 2 in Deadly Tides. And you've got Jax and Abby, who's his ex-wife, FBI agent, Abby Kelihikoa, trying to reconcile up on the mountain, and Rachel working a case down in town. So I alternate POVs throughout the book of a current case she's working and a strange person who's appeared up on the mountain with Jax and Abby. So, and maybe there's a connection going on.
And we don't know who that person is at first?
You don't know who she is at first. She seems mild-mannered, like, just kind of took the wrong road and ended up out there. And there could be some fire at the end, and a few things going wrong. Forest fires are big in the Pacific Northwest, unfortunately.
Oh gosh, been horrible in California, all the West Coast. They've been bad out here in Colorado too, and we have high wind warnings today, and it's been so dry. We've had like no snow here in Denver area.
Oh wow!
And we had horrible. Yeah, we had the horrible fire up in the Lafayette area 3 years ago that took out 1,000 homes or whatever it was, and a little close for comfort for us. It was close enough, but the smoke was just horrible. So we like to see some more moisture these days. It's been terrible.
Yeah.
So you've got that. So you got a date already for September 10th. And so is the book written, or are you still under deadline there? A little pressure?
It's all written. It's ready to go almost. I think I'll take another pass at it before it goes off to the publisher. It's due in another month to them. They work on a little bit tighter timeline, but no, it's pretty good, I think. I'm just waiting for some feedback from some, trusted reader friends, author friends. Who'll tell me whether I got it right or wrong, or what I need to do. We'll see.
Yeah, we rely on those beta readers, hopefully, to help us out. And, tell us the good and the bad.
Yes, a good beta reader or a critique partner is worth their weight in gold, as they say, because you need brutal honesty. And I always hand it over to them and say, please don't tell me anything that's right with it. I don't care. I mean, I care, but I don't really care. I want you to tell me everything that's wrong with it, because that's what I need to work on. If you want to give me a kudos at the end, that's cool, but you cannot hurt my feelings. You have got to be honest, because a reviewer will be honest. A reader will be honest. And I'd much rather hear it from you, a friend, than I would, I want to make them happy. I want to make my readers happy. So
So do you feel like in your series, do they need to read the series from the beginning, or do you feel they're mostly standalone, that they can pick them up in the middle?
Every book I tried to really focus on making them individual, so that you don't have to. Now, obviously, like on the relationship with Jax and Abby, you're not going to know the origin story if you don't start with book one. But each case that happens is on its own. So, just from the mystery aspect of it, there's all standalones. So, but obviously relationships grow and, develop, and you can't keep those stagnant. You have to keep those moving. So if you're interested in that part of it, which I think you should be, you should start with book one, but you don't have to.
Well, as I tell most people, you can, like my Private Eye series, I've got I'm on number 10. I'm working on 11 now, but I tell them you can start in the middle, but I don't have a problem if you buy them all. So start at the beginning, just make sure you buy them all, right? So
that's it.
That's what we want.
That's right.
We hope that they continue to read. So then you had so your latest book is a standalone by itself, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So Don't Ask, Don't Follow came out in June of this year. And it was my first standalone. And I was inspired to write it because I set it in a law firm. This one is actually set in the law firm that, loosely, not quite exactly how my experience was or anything. My main character, Beth, her dad owns the law firm. And the law firm is the setting. It's her boss that's murdered. But her sister, who was supposed to be coming to a holiday party, was a no-show, and then suddenly is running out the back door of the law firm with a message to Beth that says, don't ask, don't follow. and there's a dead attorney, and you're just like, okay. So, it just, now where the story goes after that is not necessarily set in the law firm part,
Right.
but that's where the beginning of the story begins. And I just really, I don't know, I think being able to utilize the law firm and also just the relationship of sisters, I found very, intriguing to explore a little bit. They're very different. The big sister, the little sister feels this need to kind of be policing somewhat of the older sister, which is not always the case. Usually it's the older sister that's taking care of the little sister. But in this case, the big sister's a little bit of the wild child. She's an investigative reporter. She'll go out on the limb and, risk life and limb to get her story. And Beth is much more grounded, which makes her the responsible one. And so, yeah, it was fun to explore that relationship.
And that idea just kind of popped in your head one day, says, I want to do, where do you, are you, I always ask people this too, pantster, plotter, in between? How do you get your stories together when those ideas start flowing?
It's kind of varies. I've always been team pantser. I sit down with an idea and I go. It's morphed over time where I'll start the book with the pantsing idea, but then I'll start plotting 3 or 4 chapters ahead. So I sort of know where I'm going, and I'm putting plot points down, like, okay, I need to get to this point. And I usually know, like, at this point I need to have, my character needs to be all in. I need to do a twist right about here. But I don't know exactly that's going to be. Sometimes I just keep writing, but intuitively it seems to keep going. I think I'm writing now my 11th book or 12. I mean, when you think about the books I've written before, and I've got several that I haven't sold that have been written. So I think I'm into my 11th book. It never gets easier. I'm never going to tell you that part, but it does there is an intuitive part of it, that you just kind of know the pacing where you need to be on the book at certain points. And so I pants a lot of that. But the book that I worked with on my sex trafficking stuff that I just finished, I actually plotted that entire book from start to finish. I spent almost 2 months plotting it before I ever wrote it, and it took me 7 weeks to write it. So that's why I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the next book's going to be. If it's going to be plotted or pantsed, I haven't decided.
You got a little more efficient there when it came to the writing, because it was all plot. And did you follow that outline pretty closely, or were there times where you would deviate a little bit?
So I will say that my plot almost looked like a pantser sort of thing. It was 50 pages long. So, I had to kind of get into the dialogue before I could move to the next chapter. I had to kind of know what was happening. I have a girlfriend who plots, and she has these little tiny paragraphs for each chapter. And I'm like, oh, no, I need like a full page. I need to get, my brain needs to start working into what this chapter looks like. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of lost train of thought there for a second. So. But yeah,
but when you plotted it out, on there, and when you wrote it, did you stick pretty much to what you had done on that, or did you kind of deviate a little bit?
No, I did. Yeah. So no, I did stick almost to it until the end. And there was one plot point that as I neared the end, I thought, this doesn't work. This isn't going to work anymore. It's like I could almost feel it as I was writing it, that it just stopped the story. Yeah. And so I took it out and reworked it and came up with something I thought was better, and then it proceeded on. So I think it's really important as a writer, to just listen to your gut, because your gut tends to know if your pacing is all of a sudden off, or something doesn't quite work right, or, that type of thing. So so it was a great plotted out novel up till about the last 6 chapters. And then it was like, this has got to go. We got to figure out and rework. And then it went.
So have there been books where you've written and you've had to kind of throw stuff away and kind of back up and go, nope, I got to redo this, especially being a pantster?
Well, I do tend to edit every day. So like if I write 2 or 3 chapters, I'm going to start back from the beginning and read and go forward again. And then, so I edit as I go. So I've never gotten into that place where I had to do too much heavy editing. Because I hate that. Like I've heard people are like, oh yeah, I print out this whole thing and I put it all over my floor and I'm like redlining it. And I'm like, that would give me an anxiety attack. Like, I can't do that. I need to have it on my screen and, you know, in pretty good format. So not to say I haven't had it add things or, you know, but not major changes.
Yeah. Throw stuff out. Do you always write in order as well? Or have you ever written an ending before you've gotten to the end?
Oh, well, yeah, I've written an ending, but I don't jump around.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty, you know, I go linear all the way through. But I think it's very helpful to write the ending sometimes, whether it sticks or not. At least it gives you that North Star, you know, gives you where you're headed. I will say that I do like to write like jacket covers before I start writing these days. Like,
really?
Yeah, just kind of
that's
like
interesting because that for some authors that's the hardest part to write. It's always to capsule that whole thing into a few paragraphs is such a challenge sometimes.
Well,
and not give too much away and all that. But
yeah.
That's interesting that you've written that.
Well, it just gives you that idea of like, you know, not to say it sticks, but at least it gives me, you know, this, you know, the legal secretary does, you know, and it gives me an idea of what the story is. What am I trying to say in this book, you know? And sometimes it changes, but it gives me a direction. That's all we can hope for sometimes. Just point us in the right direction and let us go.
Well, and do you feel like the characters are there with you sometimes, talking in your ear?
Always, yeah. Especially in dialogue, you know, I can really hear my characters, and I really enjoy that. You know, I mean, there's nothing better than getting into a back and forth and really watching the scene come alive, and yeah, I love it. It's the good stuff of writing.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned Mary Higgins Clark was an author. Were there other authors that you loved? You said you loved to read. Were there other authors that really influenced you in mystery or even outside of the mystery world?
Yeah, Faye Kellerman. I loved Faye Kellerman's series, and Sue Grafton, of course. You know, that was my inspiration for the PI Kelly Pruett series. Of course, everybody loves Kinsey Millhone. And you know, I read Grisham novels and
lawyer. You know, yeah. Have you read the Lincoln Lawyer series, Michael Connelly at all?
I haven't. Of course, I've watched a lot of that, but I've not. I haven't read any of his work. I won't say that out loud. Janet Ivanovich. I love Janet Ivanovich. I haven't.
My wife just bought her last book, and she was telling me about it the other day. The latest book, not the last book. Might be the last book, but the latest book. But
you know, I own a lot of her books, but I haven't always kept up with them. And I always say that at some point I'm going to sit down and I'm just going to read them, you know, but, you know, I'm always doing a million other things. I'm reading for friends. I'm writing my own books. You know, I'm reading for research. And I don't write that kind of novel. You know, she's wonderful, but I don't write that comedy type of, you know, mystery. So I tend to read, you know, others now, but yeah, there's just never enough hours in a day. That's the problem. That is the problem.
Well, as I told people, they always ask me, why can't you write faster? I says, well, you know, I do need to sleep. I do have other things I have to do. I'd like to think that I could write every day, but there are other things that come first sometimes for me for writing. I mean, it is a business, and I'm very inspirational. When I write in streaks. I might write every day and just blow out a bunch of words all at once, especially as I get closer to the end of the book. That end of that book just goes usually. But that beginning is usually a little bit of a slog sometimes and takes me a little longer. And then once I get to about the middle, then it really starts to roll. But
Yeah, I hear you. And sometimes you end up going back to the beginning and trying to get that opening just right.
Yeah. Yes. So are any of you mentioned the book with the law firm. Are there any people that you've met through the years have become characters, or maybe hybrids of people that you've known through the years that get a little space in your books?
I would say hybrids for sure.
Yeah.
I've never based a character specifically on one person. And if anybody sees themselves in my characters, it was not intentional.
That's why you put that at the beginning, right? You're all work. It's a work of fiction. Anything that looks like it might be someone isn't that person, right? Those
Yes,
legalese.
yes, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, you meet so many different characters, so many different work ethics, so many work styles, yeah, I mean, they're just compilations of lots of different people. But sometimes the characters just kind of come in and tell you who they are, their likes, their dislikes. And sometimes, as a writer, you just get out of the way and you almost transcribe to a certain degree who they are. They tell you.
Yeah. Do you have a little notebook at home? Like I've got mine here that anything, ideas come up. Sometimes I'll write down things.
Yep, I've got tons of notebooks. If I could show you my office, you'd see like there's tons of notebooks. But I also have my iPad, and I love the notes section of my iPad. And I'm
You have a pen?
No, I just type.
You just type it?
Yeah. I type faster than I write. Like 120 words a minute when I'm really, I was a pianist, remember?
Yes, well, yeah, and you had to do it professionally, so yeah, you had to be fast.
Organist and pianist, yes. So I've got fast fingers, so I tend to think faster. That's and even when I'm typing, people will say like, "When do you create?" I'm like, "When my fingers are moving, it's keeping up with my brain. Otherwise, I'd be in trouble." So. Yeah. And
you mentioned you sound like you write every day. You try to be pretty disciplined and sit down at least. Do you have a target number that you try to hit every day, or is just a matter of I need to get in front of the keyboard and write, and whatever is in there, I spill it out and then I stop for the day?
Well, no, I have like a 2 to 4 hour window these days. Usually closer to 4 hours that I spend writing. And I usually go for 2,000 words a day. When I'm in a productive writing mode. Like right now I'm in between. I'm editing Killer Tracks. I just finished up the Lost and Found book that I'm on my Vigilante book series, or not series, but standalone. And I'm actually in this place of trying to decide what's next. So now when I sit down to the computer, I'm just toying with ideas. And so there's no word count. But when I'm working on a book, I usually go for 2,000 a day, and usually try to get a book written in 3 months, if I can. So that's not final, but getting it drafted. So
and are you usually working on multiple projects at the same time, or usually it's like I'm focused on this book and then
well, if I'm creating, I create on one book at a time, but I can edit a second book if I need to. Like when I was working on Lost and Found, I was creating, but I was also editing Killer Tracks a little bit. So different parts of the brain, when creating is completely different for me. And very different characters. I think I'd have a harder time if they were real similar characters and not confusing my arcs and so that characters don't start sounding alike.
You don't have any characters that cross over into any of your books?
Not at this time. I always thought it'd be fun for a Kelly and Jax crossover, because Kelly's in Portland and he came from Portland before he became a small town sheriff of Misty Pines, and but not now.
Not at this time, huh?
Not at this time.
And is there a book that you want to write that you haven't written, that's kind of been burning a hole in your brain? Anything, maybe even a different genre of some kind, or?
No, not really a different genre. The book that was burning a hole in my brain was Lost and Found, and that's the one I just finished. I think that's why I wrote it in 7 weeks. part of it was that I'd had it plotted, but also just I was writing 5,000 words a day. I mean, it was just a very inspired writing for whatever reason. I can't even tell you why. It interested me so much, and I related to the characters in a way that I've not necessarily related before. So yeah, so at this point, I don't have another book that I'm just burning to write at the moment. I think I'm a little tired. I wrote 2 books this year.
Good.
And I
are long books.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, did that, and then I launched, a book in June. So yeah, and I traveled, and I found myself burning out just a little bit this month. So I'm just allowing myself to relax a little bit.
Yeah, you've earned it. I take pretty long breaks between the stuff. Like I said, people say, "Why can't you write faster?" Well, I can write crap if you want me to write crap.
Yeah. Don't you want to write? Or don't you want to read something good from me?
Yeah. I mean, as they say, what's the old adage about if you put a typewriter in front of monkeys or whatever, they can write the great novel if they type enough long enough.
That's right.
All right. So, geez, let's see, a pantser plotter. We talked about that, right? Every day. So, the book, the one you wrote that you zipped it out, Lost and Found, you said is what it's called?
Yeah.
So that's the one where we had talked a little bit at BoucherCon about, right? Is that, and I told you I had a contact, Mia, my cover artist who works she's an advocate for those children who've been trafficked.
Yeah.
And when I mentioned that, you go, "Ooh, I got a book." So tell us a little bit about your interactions with Mia and what she was able to help you with there.
Oh my goodness. Well, she was just, because she's an advocate for, children that have been trafficked, just her experience, and that it's so prevalent. She's in Hawaii area.
Yeah.
And the book is set in Hawaii that I wrote. And so it's it's cultural as well. There's a lot of different elements that go into it. And I think it was so eye-opening and so educational, how it's sitting right in front of us sometimes and we're not even aware. And also, really taking that judgment away from it, that so much of it comes from poverty. Like people get forced into different situations, and it was just very educational. Mia was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now my book that I wrote is about a vigilante. And when you meet Ellery, you don't know her backstory completely yet, other than she was raised in a sanctuary for trafficked girls, because she was left there at a young age. And the headmaster basically raises her. But she's an adult, and she kills bad men. She kills men who traffic women or young girls. And so that's how the book starts. But what I really loved about this book too is that you also meet Detective Anella. Diane Anella is a stepmother to 2 young girls, and of course would do anything to protect her children. But a very unconventional relationship with her ex-husband as she visits her children. And it becomes kind of a cat and mouse between the vigilante and this detective. So it's very cool.
And you're still shopping that one around, you said, right? That's trying to find someone that's interested.
Yes, I'm shopping for an agent at this time. Yeah.
So you don't have an agent for your previous books?
I did, actually. I left my agent back in May of this year.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you're traditionally published then? Most of your other stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, I've had traditional book deals for all of my series and for my standalone. Yeah. I even had an audio deal on Don't Ask, Don't Follow, which was fun. So
nice. Yeah. Yeah, they can be expensive to produce when you don't have a deal, because I'm independent, so I know how much all that stuff costs. So. But there's good and bad to all of it, as they say. So, and so Mia, I enjoyed it. But one of the things she told me about too is how little, especially some states, provide any support for trafficked kids. She said When she was in Arizona, nothing. They don't do anything down there. And, of course, and there's people crossing the borders there all the time and looking for things. And yeah, it was really bad. I don't know. In Hawaii, of course, there's a lot of homelessness in Hawaii. And of course, it's easy to traffic people that when they need money, which is they're down on their luck.
Yeah. And the one thing that I was very careful of in this book, but is a reality on the islands, and actually any cultural family, is sometimes the family is selling their own children to, is introducing them into that world to fund addictions that are in the family and stuff. But I'm not saying that's just a Hawaiian thing. That's a cultural thing. It can be anywhere where poverty is. But you see it on the islands, unfortunately. But Mia was really smart about all that. I mean, her experience is just amazing. I could have talked. I think we talked for 2 hours on the phone, and I feel like I could have just talked the entire day. I actually at one point said, Mia, I feel like I'm overwhelmed with information right now. Like I have to, I almost need to process this, because it was so shocking to some of the stuff. She was just very blunt. I mean, she doesn't pull punches on it. And I think, we live in our little insulated worlds that we can't even fathom some of the stuff that happens. Not even when your mind goes in a wrong place could you imagine some of the stuff it's even far worse than that. And that's really just devastating to hear that. So imagine living it, right? I was overwhelmed hearing it. So
yeah, I mean, and it's really tough too. Like she told me, if I get one out of 100 kids out of there and keep them out, it's a good day. Because a lot of times you can get them out, but they get pulled right back in again because the drugs, or they have no education. They have nothing to fall back on, and so they don't really have anything else. The other thing she told me too is like when the Ukraine war started, how the traffickers were just sitting there at the border, waiting for these families that were trying to escape the war-torn countries, trying to lure them into the trafficking. I'm thinking, sometimes you kind of wonder where kind of people there are in this world. I mean, it's all about the almighty dollar, I suppose, or I say dollar, but it's whatever the currency is of whatever country you're in. It's a lot of times. So.
Well, yeah. And I think that's part of it is, it's psychological too, for a lot of these victims, that they believe they're safer with their, traffickers than they are to be out, right? Because at least they are getting the food and that type of thing. But there's, you have to attack it from a different perspective because of the market. You have to eliminate the market. And as long as that market exists, there will always be bad people who will, like you said, for the almighty dollar, figure out a way to feed that market. So I don't know what the answer is. It's not a US problem. It's a worldwide problem. It's a human issue. So
yeah. And she's Mia, and I've never met Mia personally, but I know she's like barely 5 foot tall. She's a little teeny thing, and she goes up against these people, and these people are nasty all the time. I go, do you have security? And she goes, yeah, she's been knifed before. She has security and stuff, and she sometimes will carry a knife or other things with her to protect her. But yeah, it's pretty amazing how she has dealt with this stuff, and how she's not going to stop. She wants to build her own houses to bring these kids into and fund them and everything else. So good for her. She's got a lot more guts than I have, but hopefully there's a lot of others like her out there that can help. Like I say, because it's so terrible. But we'll get off the bad part of the world. But the title, we're getting down here. We're a little past an hour. We're not doing too bad. But I always like to ask everyone, the title of the show is Bringing Life to Characters. So what do you look for when you're creating your characters? What do you do that get them to jump off the page for you, for your readers, hopefully to grab onto? Some of those characters, your fans get so invested in, they get mad at you for some of the decisions you make about them sometimes. So,
gosh, I guess I really try to work on the emotional honesty of the character. What's the truth, for that character? What is it they want? What is it that they would just die to have, for Jax, it's, that redemption, to feel that his life is worth something, that he has purpose. And I think we can all kind of relate. So finding that relatability, I think if you find the honesty in the character, you find the relatability to your readers. I've had more people tell me that they love Jax than any other character I've ever written. I think because I found his honesty and was able to bring that to life. But that's what I try to do in all of my characters, is to find that relatability. And there are just a lot of human emotions, right, that are very relatable. Grief, we all grieve. We've all lost somebody. And so, just bringing that to life, I think, is real important, but also giving them strength, finding that inner strength in them, because you can't have a character that just wallows for too long, because then, people will throw the book across the room and say, come on, buck up or get off the page, sort of thing. So I think that's it, finding that relatability, and then finding that strength that's going to get them through and make them somebody you root for. They can fail. You can put them through the ringer, but they've somewhere in there has to be something that, they're going to get through this, because they have that strength in there. So, and that's what I look to find in all my characters.
So what about your antagonists? What do you look for in those? Do you like to write really bad guys, or do you give them a lot of good human qualities as well?
Well, usually, I would say usually, because this last book I just Killer Tracks, I'm not sure about this killer, but usually I like them to be broken, and that you can see why they chose the route that they did. Because you can be broken and you can go left, or you can go right, and the antagonist goes left, unfortunately. So
you do give them a little bit of a backstory then that you tell people about.
Yeah. At least something that you can see. Oh, okay, maybe this is why. Perhaps. I'm being loose on that one, because I'm not sure on this. Yeah, I'm not sure. But
sometimes you see shows, the bad guys are they're just as flat. They're just bad, and I like to have them with a little bit of depth and a little bit of redeeming quality, because even your good people have bad traits. Everyone has. We all have our dark side. It's whether it comes out, full blown all the time, right? We always have those little things. So I always like to give them a little bit of some type of redeeming quality, a little bit, in my stories, at least so far. I don't think I've had too many that have been, except for maybe my serial killer. He was pretty. Though the serial killer did have some background. Why he kind of became a serial killer, but
Well, and even if it's like in Don't Ask, Don't Follow, you may not agree, I may not go into like their childhood or anything, but you definitely know their life view and why they do what they do, because this is how they do life. This is how they're viewing their deed that they're doing as a good thing or a bad thing, or, whatever they're viewing, so that their perspective. It doesn't just come out of, evil people. There's always going to be something that, you can hone in on the character. I think it makes, not that you want to necessarily have them relatable, but you don't, like you said, you don't want cardboard one-dimensionals either. That doesn't,
Yeah. So some of your books I saw on your website, I don't know if you've been up for several awards. You've won a few awards. You mentioned one award for one of your early things that you had put out. So
well, I've been nominated.
Throw your books out there for a lot of the different awards, or your publisher does?
Well, yeah, a little bit of both, I think, right? My debut was nominated for a Lefty, Agatha, a Shamus, and an Anthony.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't win any of those. But I was nominated.
Well, nominated is pretty big. So
I'll take the nominations, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I did win a silver and a bronze Ippy award for the Hidden Pieces and Deadly Tides series. And I've been a finalist in the Silver Falchion twice for Misty Pines series, and the CLUE award, which is a Chanticleer, and a Foreword Indie Finalist. So I've been a finalist in quite a few, mostly for the Misty Pines series, which is, we're early days for Don't Ask, Don't Follow. We'll see what happens next year, because it came out in 2024, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, because there's so many awards. I mean, if you've ever been on Facebook, they pop up on your screen all the time, all the different awards. It's like, okay, so which ones are worthwhile? Of course, they all want money. So most of them. So you kind of pick and choose. I've Silver Falchion, Killer Nashville. I've done a few. Reader's Favorite, I've had a few there as well. But there's just so many of them out there. So.
I will say that, I really enjoy, I know that some of them we are paying for, but you're not paying to win. You're just paying to enter your campaign. What I like about them is that your work is getting read. And I think that's really important distinction. Sometimes, it's really fun to be nominated for certain awards. But if you're being nominated by your peers, who probably or your friends, and they maybe haven't actually read the book, it's lovely. I'm not taking anything away from it, but it's different than like the Edgar Award, which is everybody's reading those books and you're being nominated because of the work versus that. Like I said, not taking anything away because it's all lovely, If you get a nom, you get a nom. It's all great. But I do like the ones that you pay for, even because at least they're reading the work. And if you get nominated or if you make it into the finalist round, a judge actually read your book. So it just feels like
hopefully several read your book. Hopefully,
several books. Yeah. Well, if you're in the finalist, you've probably been read 3 or 4 times. Yeah, at least.
Yeah, I would hope so. Yes. Yeah. So events. So we were talking before the show started about the Left Coast Crime. It's going to be held in Denver this year. You're not going to be able to come. Darn, we'll get to see you.
Yeah, I'm bummed because it's the first time that I haven't.
Yeah, because it goes all over too, kind of like BoucherCon, right?
Yeah, it was in Seattle this last year, so I actually get to drive up.
Yeah.
But this year I will be at the Tucson Festival of Books. I was invited to come, and so I'll be on a panel on both Saturday and Sunday. And so, yeah, I'm very excited. Craig Johnson's going to be there, and William Kent Kruger is going to be there. So I think they've got a really nice mystery lineup of people. So Deborah
Is that the same weekend?
It's the exact same weekend.
Wow, I'm surprised that they both scheduled it the same weekend.
Yeah, I was really bummed. But I'm not turning down Tucson because I think that's pretty. It's cool to be invited to that.
Yeah, that's one I'll have to check out in the future because Tucson's not too far away, and I've been to Tucson before. So, in the days of spring training baseball, I went down there a couple times to see the Rockies. So,
I love it.
And I had an office there with the company I used to work for. So we went to Phoenix, which is not too far away, and stuff. So, yeah, so that's too bad. And you said you probably won't be able. You don't think you're going to be able to make BoucherCon this year?
Yeah, it's on the fence. I'm not sure. I've not been to New Orleans, so I could talk myself into that one. We leave for Scotland right after, so I have some international travel this year. So it kind of timing is part of it. So we'll see.
Well, that's about the time of your new books being released too, because BoucherCon's the first weekend of. That's right. It's right after Labor Day, in September.
Yeah, it is Labor Day weekend, isn't it? Right? I
think it's the weekend after because if I remember right, but I could be wrong. I know it's right there at the beginning of September. So.
Yep, I do, and I have my book launch on the 10th, and then then I'm off to Scotland right after that. So.
Doing a world tour promoting the book?
Sure. Absolutely.
That's what the IRS thinks, right?
I need to set a book on a cruise ship or something along those lines so I can tax write off the whole thing.
And so any others coming up besides that the rest of the year? You got Tucson?
I got Tucson. That's in Thriller Fest in New York, perhaps in June. Yeah, I am registered for that. So
yeah.
Of
course, you got that puppy coming, so that's going to take a lot of your time for a little while there.
I'm excited for that, though. That's okay.
Yeah. Like you said, you have to puppy-proof the house.
That's right. I've got a whole closet full of toys I'm collecting. Toys I can stuff and freeze, and
Yes.
Here, eat this, not my shoe.
Yeah, we learned try not to give them toys that look like anything else you don't want them to bite. Like I took a bunch of socks and tied them into old socks and tied them into a knot for her to play tug of war with. That was a bad idea because now any sock is lying around, she thinks it's a toy. So like that was bad. So I got in trouble for that one. So
yeah, I can see that could be a bad thing. Yeah.
Okay, so do you have any marketing tips? What do you do to market your books other than being on my show, obviously?
Yeah, on your show, have my husband who walk around and talk about my books. He's very good at that.
Yes, he was. I enjoyed talking. We talked for quite a while there at BoucherCon.
Yeah, he's my biggest fan. Definitely my best publicist, I would say.
Yeah.
Funny, just talking about your books, I think is a huge, so when we do travel, we talk, like I said, my husband will talk about it, but I'm doing 3 book clubs this year. I've done 3 book clubs and 2 coming up next year of people that I met on our travels. So I talk about the book, I hand them stuff. I say, hey, if you have a book club, I'll be happy to join you via Zoom. And I've been getting emails. Hey, will you join our club? I did Montana. I'm doing Florida in a couple of weeks. So, that's been fun. But as far as marketing, like things you can actually use, podcasts. Sometimes I do blog posts for people, but mostly it's my newsletter. I just really focus in on my newsletter, and I do giveaways, and I partner with other authors to do what they call newsletter swaps, where I'll promote your book and you can promote my book in each other's newsletters. I think that's been really effective. But mostly really just talking about it when it comes up, and, volunteering to come to people's book clubs is really good. Get into your local bookstore, become friendly with the bookstore owner, see if they have book clubs that they're hosting. I actually joined the Ridgefield Readers, close to where I live. They have 25 members. And every time I have a book launch, I have my book launch there, and I get invited to the book club. And there's 25 sales right there. So it's just, book clubs are fun. So I encourage you to find those. They've been good fun. Yeah, and they'll buy your next one. It's an automatic almost for the next one. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm constantly. Anytime I do an event, somebody said they're in a book club, I say, give me a call. I haven't had a lot of them call me back though, but I have been at least to one where I got to go to it and meet the people there, which was nice. And then they've all been fans since. But yeah, those book clubs are great. Sometimes it's like they don't read my type of book. And sometimes it seems like there's a lot of politics in some of the book clubs too. They're like, well, I don't get to decide what we get to read. So so I said, well, give them my card. And I'll come and talk. They don't have to buy anything. I mean, just let me come. I'll come and talk to you, or do Zoom or whatever. So
I think that's it. It's a numbers game, right? If you keep mentioning it, that people will, and I think a lot of times people don't understand that how excited we are as authors to join them. I love to come and talk about my book. They'll be like, you actually come? And I said, via Zoom. Yeah. Well, if you're in Montana, I'll absolutely join you via Zoom. Really? And I'm like, we love this stuff. Yeah. I mean, this is what we live for, is to talk about our stories. So I think they get a kick out of it. And of course we get a kick out of it as authors. So I think it's all fun.
Well, and there's like with BoucherCon, I met so many authors there, and my wife's, she's the big go up to walk and talk to anybody. And I've gotten better at it and stuff, but I got to talk to Andrew Child, Lee Child's brother, got a picture with him, and talked to him. Reed Farrell Coleman, he's been on my show. He's a big time author. I mean, it was, and they were all very welcoming. Anybody who I talked to was very welcoming, and a lot of them were willing to, be on the show down the line. So that was always good. So yes, most authors are always happy to talk. There was a few that are maybe too busy and stuff, but generally speaking, even the big ones are like, sure, I'll come on your show.
Yeah.
No big deal.
I think we all write because we're storytellers, right? And so if we get a moment to talk about story and how we create and just, connecting with our readers, I mean, that's why we do what we do. So it keeps us coming back. So, and I think you're right, especially in the mystery world. I think very welcoming group of people. I don't have a lot of experience with other genres, but I have found it in the mystery suspense world. Everybody's pretty down to earth in a lot of ways. So
yeah. So there's your website.
Yes.
And they can sign up for your newsletter on your website.
It's the best way to kind of know what I'm doing and what's coming up. Absolutely.
And how often do you put out a newsletter?
Right now, it's usually just the first Tuesday, second Tuesday of every month. Yeah, second Tuesday of every month. When I get closer to a book launch, sometimes you'll start seeing it every couple of weeks. But in between books, I don't bug you. Just kind of once a month, drop in, tell you what I'm doing.
Well, and I do a feature author in my newsletter, so I'd love to add you here coming down the line. I'll put you on my list as well, and I always have them write a little paragraph about themselves and a picture and then links to all their stuff. So love to add you. I've got January's, I've already got an author. I thought, hopefully, Lanessa Lane, hopefully. She was supposed to be in December and she didn't get back to me in time. So she said, okay, I'll do January. And I'm still waiting to hear from her. So she might, if she bails on me, I might be calling you. Who knows?
Awesome.
Mine will be going out next week. So I haven't written it yet either. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I got to get it written.
I'm like you. I write it like right before.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I always have, this is the one place where I sometimes do a little plotting because I've already got a newsletter started and I've got lines in there. This is what I talk about, this, and this. So this one's going to be like my year in review. So kind of everything that happened this last year. So, so that one shouldn't hopefully be too difficult to write. So I throw a lot of pictures in too. So sometimes it's more photos and pictures than it is actual writing. So
that's all right. I think people like that too. So,
yeah, especially the fun stuff. Like I do gardening stuff, the things we're doing around the house. I throw a lot of personal stuff in there as well as writing because I figure you got to change it up. You don't want to talk too. I mean, obviously you're there to promote your books, but you want them to show the personal side as well of yourself. And I think a lot of people enjoy that. I know some have sent me pictures back, of their garden. I show pictures of our garden and they send me back. So.
Yeah, that is the fun part of, when I was starting to write in 2000, that, you didn't know your authors, but now with social media, I think you really get to know people on a different level. It's very different, but it's cool. Yeah. All
right. Well, was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we covered everything.
Got all your books, talked about your ones coming up and everything.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thank you.
Good luck with the new book when it comes out and the ones you're working on. Good luck with the puppy. Sorry, I can't help you there. I'm not a puppy guy, so I like dogs that are already broken in before I get them.
Come on. You don't like the challenge? The midnight
no, I don't like cleaning up after them too much. Though when my daughter got her pit bull, it was a little less than a year, and it was a stray that was at the pound, so it took a little bit. We had some accidents before we got her. We had to kennel train her and stuff, but she still was having some accidents. Now she's great, but that was probably the closest we've ever been to a puppy. I've had kittens before. We don't do cats anymore because my wife's just too allergic. But
well, we're excited. Well, I'll keep you posted how that goes. If I'm still excited, I'm not.
Well, hopefully you throw some pictures in your newsletter to share with everyone, right? When you get
there. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mary. I appreciate you being on. All the best. We'll see you maybe at some events down the line.
Absolutely. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Stay safe.
You too. Aloha.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everyone. Next week on Monday, I'll be talking to Barbara Nicholas, which will be fun. She's a local author here that lives in Colorado, and I've met her before at several events. And she's got a new book that's coming out January 1st. So I'll get a chance to talk with her. So that'll be great. We've talked a couple of times, but never at length. So be great. And then I've got some other authors lined up down the roads. Every few weeks, every couple of weeks, we'll be doing a show. and hoping to go. And then I got my new book, which is in the final stages of editing. It should be coming out sometime in February, which don't have a date yet. So, but thanks everyone. Take care. Happy New Year to everyone. Stay safe out there.